Hi, my name is Frank Dickerson, and I'm going to be giving you a little information about myself to let you know who I am. I've tried to put some things about myself on a narrative arc. Aristotle said all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the 19th century, Frederick Freytag expanded upon that and described a narrative arc as being a combination of exposition, an inciting incident, rising action, a climax, then either a success or failure, then falling action and resolution. So I look at some of the events in my life as as if I were a novelist, putting it into a perspective. In 1969, I was a student at The Ohio State University as a freshman. You can tell I've changed just a little bit since then. I'm not your average RCC student. In fact, 520 out of 1,000 RCC students are under 25 years. Only 5 out of 1,000 are 65 and older. So I'm in that latter group. And I lived at Lincoln Tower at Ohio State University along the Olentangy River when I was a student there. And the oval, as you see here, has crisscrossing sidewalks. This used to be the center of the campus in 1870. Now, these are no longer brick sidewalks, and I'm going to get to why that's the case in a little bit. In 1969, Richard Nixon was president of the United States. There was a war going on in Vietnam that was quite controversial. And he met with President from South Vietnam, Nguyen Van Thieu, in Wake Island to try to discuss troop withdrawals. So this was a swirling issue. On a more positive note, in July, I was at the Marion, Ohio Drive-In with my girlfriend, Mary. We were listening to Easy Rider on the screen. All of a sudden, the management broke through and gave us coverage of the landing on the moon. Neil Armstrong was about ready to set his foot on the lunar surface. And it was interesting to us because he only grew up 65 miles from where we were watching the movie. Then he uttered those famous words, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." I didn't get to Woodstock, but that followed the moon landing at Yasgur's Dairy Farm in Bethel, New York. In that same year, in October, the very first message ever sent over what we now know as the internet was sent at UCLA to Stanford Research Institute by Leonard Kleinrock's lab. Then, a dreadful night. In December of 1969, the draft was reinitiated. More troops were needed to fight in Vietnam. And they reached into the bucket, pulled out a number, and mine was number 160. Had I not been a deferred student, I would have fought in the Vietnam War. And then came a terrible day. Nixon said that he is expanding the war into Cambodia. All hell broke loose on campuses around America. National Guard troops were sent in to quell the rioting. But in one particular case, just about 2 hours north of Columbus, all hell broke loose and 4 students were killed and 9 were wounded at Kent State University. On campus at Ohio State, I was the president of a student organization and worked with faculty advisors to try to quell the violence between the rioters and the National Guard. I remember one day at about 11 o'clock, I was leaving a class in Denny Hall, right next to the administration building. And as I went to the lobby, turned to the left, was about ready to push the bar on the door open, all of a sudden I saw troops standing at the door with M1s pointed at me. And finally they left only a few seconds later to rejoin the hundreds and hundreds of troops on the oval, pushing everyone back step by step. They had this habit of formation where they would turn their left foot out, their right foot parallel, hold their rifles in goose step across the oval, pushing everyone off with bayonets affixed. We finally got off campus, but not till we encountered students who, remember those brick sidewalks I said used to be there but no longer were? Well, they would rip up bricks from the sidewalks to throw at the National Guard. That had led to deadly consequences the night before. So that's little bit about my story. Now what I do is I tell stories as a living, helping nonprofits raise funds.